Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Liberty, a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called the NSF, but the mother has went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her, they've been dealing court.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Chad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Please let me know in chat if you guys can hear my audio and if the sound is good. Hello to all my moderators and members and everyone watching. This is the first live stream on the Gilgo case, also known as Long Island serial killer case, as well as the defendant's name, Rex Heuermann, who obviously is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But we're going to do a deep dive into everything we know about Rex thus far and everything that we know about the case in general, even the victims that were found out in that area, the same area as the ones that he's being charged for. He's being charged for 4 of them. He's pled not guilty, and he is not set on, there's no bail for him to get out. So what we're going to do is just deep dive. And I think, yes, thank you, Adrian, for letting me know the sound is good. And yeah, we have a lot to go through. And hello, Rebecca. It's good to see you. And it's good to see everyone tonight. Hi. I want to get right into it because there's a lot to go through. I've clipped together some important clips as well as recorded some important facts that I think that we should just get out there right away. I also want to play a Brian Enton segment that was just put out that I think kind of paints a good background picture. So let me switch up the screen. Give me 1 second, everybody. And thank you so much for being here. I did send the link out to some friends. I know it's Sunday and a lot of people are busy, so it might just be me tonight, but either way, I've got a lot to discuss with you guys. So let me just play this and then, yeah, just thanks everyone for being here.
Describe him as an ogre. Now, I spoke with a legislator here in Suffolk County, Rob Trotta, who told me, and Trotta had been a detective at the time in Suffolk County from 1988 to 2013, helping to cover that investigation. That investigators who he spoke to did not know at the time of those 2 main leads, the driver and the truck associated with Costello.
You would think, okay, there's phone calls in Massapequa, there's phone calls in Manhattan. He's probably taking the train. He's near the train station. Let's put 10 guys on the train and look for someone 6'4" or 6'6". They're going to stick out like a sore thumb. Let's check the parking lot. Let's check the neighborhood. If we can find this car. I don't know what was done, but clearly something wasn't done correctly, because once they got this Chevy Avalanche, the whole thing fell into place.
Brian, there's also been a lot of criticism about corruption in the department, and it is well documented. The stories are.
I just want to pause there right there. Just pay close attention because, as I said, this sort of paints a background. And I think that every little aspect of the case, even, through what law enforcement was doing behind the scenes or whatever you want to call it, corruption, this kind of just lays it out there before we get into the facts of the case and into Rex Heuermann himself. And hello, Justice Served Daily. It's good to see you.
Are unbelievable about the former police chief, James Burke, who was taken over as police chief several months after the bodies in Gilgo Beach were found. Now, he had been caught in his car while on duty sleeping with a sex worker. And there are accusations that Burke had prevented the FBI from working with investigators here once they found out that they were looking into him and his personal matters.
Yes, Lone, that is one of the things that I have found the most fascinating.
And there's been multiple sources outside of this report through News Nation that pretty much have said the local police department there, the people handling the case at the time just did not accept extra help from FBI and didn't seek it at all, because I think there were things that obviously they didn't want uncovered about their own department. So that kind of puts an explanation on why did it take so long possibly to catch him. Again, this is just everything that's been talked about behind the scenes and out on the media openly. Now that they had this new task force that joined last year, everything kind of escalated in a positive direction for justice.
And disturbing when you dig into this case, past just the headlines of the last week, is the way this case has been treated over the last decade before this special task force became involved. And you mentioned it. I mean, the former police chief telling the FBI that they don't even want help on the case. It's no wonder it took so long to get solved. And now there are these new allegations that not only was the case mishandled, but there was this whole other scandalous side of this involving possible prostitutes and the police department. Have you learned anything about that?
Right. The story and the timeline is just crazy when you start to look into it, because we have James Burke, who had been caught in his car when he was sergeant in the 90s. And then shortly after these bodies are found on Gilgo Beach, he is promoted to police chief. So he's not even fired after being caught on duty in his police car having sex with sex workers, but he's assigned to a case that involves the murder of sex workers. And investigators have said that that could have changed the outlook and how the severity in which people were looking at this case. And also looking into Burke. In 2013, the FBI began to investigate him for accusations of battering a suspect and also trying to cover up that battery. He had been convicted of those crimes in 2016. This came after a thief had broken into his car, stolen a duffel bag full of sex toys and pornography.
Yeah, look, I mean, even more is going to come to light.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com.
So very scandalous, in my opinion. That kind of gives us a little bit of a background, just so everyone's got their feet wet now. We can kind of jump into the case itself. But yeah, it's just unbelievable. It's just a rabbit hole that I've fallen into. Even the victim that we're going to discuss tonight, Shannon Gilbert, at one point, we're going to look into her demise, which hasn't been officially linked to Rex Heuermann. So we've just got a lot to get into. And thank you so much for becoming a member, Punksy and B Crumbs. I appreciate that so much. So yeah, let me just switch my screen up and start playing through the clips. But yeah, it really hurt the case for a long time. And again, it's about getting a conviction. So I think that we might be in a situation where he could be linked to other cases possibly out there, but they just were beyond being able to link him like with DNA or whatever. And there's also cases in Atlantic City that people are speculating he could be tied to. There's property that he owns and that he had his car on in South Carolina, which I guess was in shambles as well, that his brother lives at, or something like that. They both live down there. Either way, they're also looking into Nevada. He owns a timeshare out there. So we just want to ask pretty much tonight, are there more victims out there that will be linked to Rex? Here we see Rex being surrounded by cops in Midtown the moment that he was arrested on a Thursday evening.
When a job that should have been routine suddenly becomes not routine, I get the phone call.
Rex, did you do it? The only thing I can tell you that he did say as he was in tears was, I didn't do this.
Rex Heuermann is 59 years old. He was born in 1964 and born and raised in Long Island, New York. His father was an aerospace engineer, and when Rex was 12 years old, his father passed away. Rex graduated high school in 1981. In 1990, he married his wife, who was an office supply company executive. He actually lives in the house that he grew up in.
He grew up there as a kid with his parents.
While the neighbors said his house was an eyesore, Rex raised 2 children in that home. The oldest child is his stepson, and his daughter was in her mid-20s and actually working with him at his architect company. Many people sat on the train with Rex and had no idea that he was actually the Long Island serial killer, also known as the Gilgo beach killer.
You never know who's living on your block.
A neighbor also claims he would burn trash regularly.
To wake up and find out that that's where he lived. Shocking.
He walks every morning to the train. When I come down with my car to drop my wife off, I see him walking. He walks with a briefcase. He walks in a suit. Doesn't look like every other American type person, I guess. I see him all the time, but I don't say and I don't know anything. I don't stop and say, hi, how are you, or anything like that. No, I never said a word to him. I do see him walking. I imagine he's going to the train because he's dressed up in a suit in the morning. And that's pretty much about it. He looks like your average Joe.
He owed around $250,000 in back taxes to the IRS. Thank you, B Crumbs, for gifting memberships. I really appreciate that, and welcome to all the members. He's pled not guilty to all charges.
Heurmann was charged with murder in the deaths of 3 women and is the prime suspect of another victim whose bodies were first discovered on Long Island in 2010.
Over 300 subpoenas and search warrants have been used so far. Some items that were seen by the media leaving Rex's house included a vault door, handcuff, and keys. A doll was taken out in a handmade glass coffin. A painting of a battered woman was also taken out of the house. He's being held without bail. A high school classmate has also come forward and indicated that he was bullied in school. He was a duck hunter. This here is called Vanish. It's camo burlap. The medical examiner has also showed up at a storage locker that Rex owned.
Are there body parts or things that we need to take a look at? Are there trophies of some of the victims that unfortunately that he stored in that location?
The victims were all petite female sex workers with green or hazel eyes, but there was also 2 exceptions. A 2-year-old girl and an Asian male were also found nearby. I just want to pause it real quick and just speak on somebody commented just about how he lived in chaos, but at the same time, if you look at the crime itself, you'll see that he falls under the category of being like an organized serial killer. Every one of them was wrapped in that burlap that was helped them get camouflaged out in the elements. He did the same method for a lot of them. And I think that's another reason why they're not attaching some of the victims found out there to him, because they just weren't the same as in burlap, and just indicators that, it was the same killer pretty much. The area was closer for some of the victims together. But yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that we're uncovering when it comes to all the other people that were found out there too, as like the toddler that was found likely with her mother, who was a sex worker. So, and the toddler was likely collateral damage. It's just very sad. First victims identified are Maureen Branyard Barnes, who was 25, Melissa Bartholomew, who was 24, Amberlynn Costello, 27, and Megan Waterman, 22, who can. And that's true. That's the thing, is they definitely could be tied to him, because like Kelly said, he could have changed his MO. Maybe he got better at the crime itself, so he changed his method a little bit differently. It's just, you just don't know. I wouldn't put it past that he's connected to other victims that were found out there, as well as maybe other areas. Like he might have found new dumping grounds that he felt more comfortable with. So then they were all found there. And there are other people somewhere else. Sadly, we just don't know yet. Be seen here last on her way to meet her client, Rex.
What I want most is answers and justice. And I also want that the world to know, like, my sister mattered.
An eyewitness vehicle description was a huge break in the case, and this eyewitness was actually Amber's own sister.
During a Google search of old maps, investigators discovered a green Chevy Avalanche parked outside Heurmann's house in plain sight.
Not only did he own the Chevy Avalanche, but he matched the physical description.
But you were aware that he was patronizing other sex workers?
It certainly appeared as though he was, yes.
We're continuing to execute search warrants, and we anticipate getting more evidence.
Rex Heuermann used burner phones to keep up with the ongoing investigation, to reach sex workers, and to also search sites depicting SA. He used fictitious names for email accounts and phones to conduct thousands of searches related to sex workers, sadistic torture-related pornography, and child SA. His online search records also showed an interest in the case itself, such as why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught, and why law enforcement cannot trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer. I do want to pause it real quick and just expand a little bit more on these searches. Now, when we're talking about Shannon Gilbert, who was a victim that was found out there, the one that made the 911 call, the media had reported up until recently that, well, the law enforcement has tried to distance that she's connected to Long Island serial killer, but it's been theorized that it's possible. And then media has reported it pretty much as a fact that she is a victim of the Long Island serial killer. And this is all before Rex got arrested. So keep that in mind. Now, for my own research, I typed in the part where it says on here how Rex himself on a burner phone typed in Long Island serial killer phone call. So I typed that in Google and I immediately pulls up to Shannon Gilbert's 911 call. And that's the main thing that comes up under videos, under news, just Google in general. You guys can do it too. And you'll see Shannon Gilbert comes up and it's all her articles and videos prior to Rex being arrested. Now, we do know through everything that we've been going through that, and actually Melissa Jade read through a lot of the documents. And thank you everyone for being here for Melissa's live stream. That was very interesting and I appreciate you guys jumping over here. But we knew from some of the stuff that she read through in the documents that he did make taunting phone calls to some of the victims' family members, specifically a sister. So you will actually see that come up, an article regarding how he was taunting some of the victims, the Long Island serial killer. This is before Rex is arrested, so they don't have like the perpetrator's name in the articles. But I just find it interesting that if he was Googling this himself, the Long Island serial killer phone call, he would have seen, you know, Shannon's face and that article and those videos, as well as a small article or just a different article that talked about how he was taunting the victims. So now I'm left to think like, okay, so was he looking up the article about taunting? Because we do know that that burner phone was linked to the one that was taunting the victim's family. But was he also, which, you know, law enforcement is saying that he's not connected to Shannon Gilbert's death, but he would have seen that that was coming up under Long Island serial killer, 911 call, etc. So I just think it's interesting that he was Googling that, but at the same time, we don't know which call he was kind of looking up to look into. Because I believe that there's still a chance that he was connected to Shannon's death also. So that's sort of what we're kind of digging into as well tonight, because I just feel like he could definitely be linked to other victims that were found out there, and obviously other ones maybe in Atlantic City and other places.
Investigators later recovered his DNA from a pizza crust he discarded in Manhattan and matched it to genetic material found on the bodies. They also linked him to other evidence, including burner phones used to arrange meetings with the victims.
Some of the evidence stacked against Rex: his wife's DNA was found on 3 of the victims' bodies. One of his own hairs was found on one of the victims' bodies. Cell phone calls made from a burner phone to the victims were traced to his office. A call made to one of the victim's sisters after she died was traced to his office. His Tinder profile with pictures of him was linked to his burner phone. His Chevrolet pickup truck was seen by an eyewitness. He matches descriptions of ogre-like man seen with one victim before she vanished. Rex conducted graphic searches for child P and images of women being SA'd. He also searched Google for updates on the case, searching why could law enforcement not trace the calls made by the Long Island serial killer. It's also noteworthy how close Rex actually lived from the dumping ground of all these bodies.
A black leather belt embossed with the letters.
Now, this is a press conference before Rex was ever murdered, and this is regarding some belt that was found at the scene.
HM or WH was recovered during the initial stages of this investigation. We believe that the belt was handled by the suspect and did not belong to any of the victims.
Rex Heuermann is a demon that walks among us, a predator that ruined families.
Shannon Gilbert was among those who went missing after making this desperate call to 911. In all, police found the remains of 11 people in the area of Gilgo Beach, including a toddler.
Do you think that there's a connection to Rex and everyone else found in the area?
And we try to uncover.
Okay, so now that we've got a little bit of an intro into Rex and the case that he has going against him, those 4 counts he has pled not guilty to, and now this gets into an episode from Court TV. Now I've spliced it so it's not as long, but I've kept in some of the important parts, in my opinion, and just streamlined the 911 call so we can hear it without the commentary. But this is a year ago, so obviously before Rex has been arrested. And just hello, everyone who's joining. I appreciate you guys being here. If you haven't hit like, please hit like. So keep in mind that this is from a year ago. This is when they first released the 911 call, and this is Shannon Gilbert. Now, in Melissa Jade, you read the documents. They stated that some of the victims were found during a cadaver dog training course. And in all the media, and including this Court TV episode, and even to this day, they're still reporting that they were out there looking for Shannon and then stumbled on other stuff, other bodies. So I just find it interesting how in the court documents, it didn't mention anything about they were out there looking for Shannon. Yeah, it is amazing that they managed to find everyone else during that. But I also think it's strange that they didn't, like they said that it was from a dog search, like a training course for dogs. So I don't know. There's a lot that's just not making sense with all this too. And keep in mind, the first 5 minutes of the stream, I played that Brian Enton segment, which was new. I think it was from last night. And he talks to people there on the ground, boots on the ground, and they're reporting the back history with the law enforcement and how some of the officers are also intertwined with sex workers in the area. So just keep all that in mind while we listen to this Court TV segment from a year ago, okay?
What happened to Shannon, how she died, and why the
Yes, Melissa, I'm telling you. Okay, so Melissa said, I thought the same thing. Because remember, Melissa read through his bail, something to do with his bail, but it was like court documents, 32 pages, gives a lot of detail, but it pretty much, she's saying, I thought the same thing. They were looking for Shannon, so why not mention it? I feel like they're trying to distance like Shannon's case with everything else. Now, that's just my speculation. I'm not sure why. But I think about it too. What makes Shannon different from the other victims found out there? She called 911. So just think about that. And another side note, since somebody just mentioned Shannon's mother was killed by Shannon's sister after Shannon was went missing and was found dead. So this has just spiraled out of control, even through the victims' families. Like, they need closure, and there's still nobody who has been held accountable for Shannon's murder. So I just find this all very interesting. Again, this segment is before Rex was arrested.
This case has still not been solved.
You know, when you grab that cell phone and you dial those 3 numbers, 911, there is only one reason we do it. We are desperate. We need help. We know things are not right. We're in a situation where we cannot handle it by ourselves. It's dangerous. That's why we call 911. When we need help and we know we're in trouble. Shannon Gilbert made that call to 911. And in that call, which lasted many, many minutes, revealed a lot of information. A lot of information. But for years, no one has heard that 911 call. And the reason we were given for years by investigators was it could harm the investigation. And we hear that line a lot, and I get it. Maybe in the first 24 hours, the first 48 hours, maybe the first year, maybe the first couple years. But when you're talking about more than a decade and you still haven't come up with an answer, we're not harming anything. Because it's clear that investigation is not getting it done. So now it took a judge's order to get that 911 call released. Shannon Gilbert died that night, and no one's been held responsible. Well, there hasn't been an answer as to what happened. But not only did she die, I mean, there was body after body after body that was all discovered in this area in Long Island, New York. Finally, we're starting to learn a little bit more about what happened the night that Shannon Gilbert died.
And yes, thank you, Perry, for this comment. He said, I don't think Shannon Gilbert was a victim of Rex Heuermann unless the client and her driver was his accomplice. And that's the thing that is also a different scenario with Shannon's death, right? Because none of the other victims were in a group setting, even with a driver or a bodyguard, whatever you want to call it. So it does make things different. So I can understand why there's that argument. I also think it's just common sense. Someone calling 911 was in need of help. And, to link it back to Rex, I know is kind of a stretch with everything that law enforcement is saying is not connected. But I do think, unfortunately, in this case, law enforcement being linked themselves to sex workers, I think that there's room to kind of maybe speculate that there could be something else going on that they just don't want associated or to be uncovered during if Shannon was linked to Rex. More could be uncovered possibly that would show a bad light on people involved. And that's just, again, a possibility. I'm not saying that that's what it is, but with a doctor being involved too, I can't help but wonder. And again, this is just speculation, allegedly, my opinion, who knows? Who knows how much money can, hide things. Again, that's just what I'm saying. And I think that that's sort of what the lawyer for Shannon's family, who's a guest on Vinny's show here, kind of insinuates too, that there's just something not right going on behind the scenes.
Police, Trooper Fry. State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
I'm sorry?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know. Can you trace where I am?
I'm sorry?
Can you trace where I am?
No, I can't. What's your callback number you're calling from?
Huh?
What phone number are you calling from?
Somebody's after me. Please.
Are you in Suffolk County or Nassau County?
I'm in Long Island.
Where on Long Island are you?
No. 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 No, stop, no.
Where in Long Island are you? In Suffolk County? Nassau County?
Huh? Why? Why you call me by my name? Why?
County, you on the line?
Stop. Please. Stop it, please. Please stop. Please, can you shut the door?
No, time to go.
Please. Please. Please.
Go that way, please. Come on, let's go. Come on, roll that side. Come on, go outside. Come on, all of us. Come on, roll outside. Come on.
No, please.
Come on. Please, come on.
Please.
Come on.
Why?
Just come out here. I'm upstairs. You leave. I'm going to go upstairs. I'm going to go upstairs. You leave. I'm going to go upstairs. Okay? You leave, please. Please, get there. My hold. What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me? Why?
Huh? Well, I don't know, but it was transferred to me.
Why?
No.
What are you going to kill me? Kill me? Why are you going to...
Call Suffolk County.
You freaking down, come on.
I'm in the middle of nowhere?
Let's go back to Manhattan, right? We're in Long Island. We're up near the water.
Please, stop.
Please, Mike. Brother, come on.
No, stop it, please. These people are plotting to kill me.
Where are you? What's your address? What's your address?
My address.
What's your address?
No, Mike, stop, Mike, here. Mike, stop. Mike, stop, Mike. Mike, stop it.
Where are you?
Mike, stop it. Mike, stop it.
What's your name, Shannon?
Huh? Mike, stop.
What?
I'm here.
Where are you? What's your address? Hello?
You want me to call the police?
Yeah, hold on, then I know you're telling the truth. Get the address.
What are we going to tell them?
Tell them something. Mike, stop it. You guys are planning something. You're going to kill me.
Where in Long Island are you?
I don't know. You're going to kill me.
Are you in a house? Are you in a house?
Yeah.
Whose house is it?
I don't know.
Hello? Hello?
Please.
What's the matter? What happened? Hello?
Please, get me out of here, Mike.
Hello?
You're being sarcastic about this. You were part of this all along.
I have managed it now.
Shannon.
That is the voice.
Okay. So I just want to pause it there before we carry on. But yeah, that is the full call. I only say full phone call because later after this, I'm going to play a press conference with the police, and they pretty much don't play her screaming at the end for everyone. So I just want to state that this is a full one. That's meaningful screams, in my opinion. I know people, including law enforcement, and just a lot of narrative being pushed that she was in a drug psychosis and that she had mental problems, etc. All that could be true, and she could still have needed help and called 911. So, I mean, for people to say she sounds drunk, she sounds like she's on drugs, I still think that that could be true, but she still could have realized that she was in some sort of danger. That's just my opinion. I know that people might not agree with that. I know that there was violence with the mother and her sister after Shannon went missing. So people just assume it could be genetics, and it very well could be. I just feel like you can't just say that she was quote unquote crazy and didn't need help, in my opinion. You know, she said things like, these people are plotting to kill me. They want to kill me. Part of this call, or she also said, you were part of this all along. I believe that the lawyer for the family is going to come on, and he's going to state that through their investigation themselves, their private one, included another medical examiner that believes that her death was murder. So he actually has a different opinion than what the cops are saying. But pretty much they also concluded that it showed that Shannon arrived somewhere and then left and then came back to this area and then called 911. So they're speculating in their defense that this was foul play involved, and that, you know, something had happened during that time that she had left with whoever, and it tipped her off to think that she was in some sort of situation in danger. So, and let me carry on and we'll listen to what the lawyer has to say. And it's this family lawyer.
Of Shannon Gilbert calling 911 on May 1st of 2010. She was calling from the gated community of Oak Beach on Long Island in New York. Shannon was a prostitute who visited a client in that neighborhood. That call for help did not save her. Shannon disappeared. The initial search of the area Shannon was calling from did not reveal what happened to Shannon or where she was. But it did uncover something even more shocking: a series of bodies and a potential serial killer. And as more bodies were discovered, the search intensified, and finally, 18 months later, Shannon's body was found.
And the attorney who represents Shannon Gilbert's family, John Ray, is back with us. I need you to start to fill in some of the blanks for me and for everyone watching tonight. She's inside a house. Whose house is she in? Who is she with?
She's in the house of Joseph Brewer, who was a John. And at the time you hear her calling, and right after that, certainly Brewer is in the house. And then her driver, Michael Pack, appears to have come into the house, or else he was already there. And those are the only two we can identify as having been there.
Do you suspect that there were other people there? It's hard to tell in that 911 call. There's voices in the background. There's some mumbling. Do you suspect that there was anyone else inside the house that night?
There were other people there. Whether they were in the house or outside the house is not clear. But Shannon certainly believes that they are in both places. And that's the underlying key to the first part of the calls, that Shannon was acting perfectly rationally. She had a very hard decision to make. She went out of character for a prostitute and called 911 and desperately looked for help because, as she said, somebody was after me. And that somebody couldn't have been Joseph Brewer, because you hear Brewer, he's the John, he's been with her for hours. It would make no sense for her to make that kind of a statement if she was reporting Brewer. And indeed, when you hear Brewer saying that, words to the effect that, I want to talk to you, and she just says no, she doesn't identify him as the culprit who's chasing her. She's worried about somebody who's outside. And you can hear that in the following parts of the tape.
So he's reiterating in his opinion that she is worried about something that took place outside of the people who you hear in the background on 911 and outside of that house. Again, how does this connect to Rex Heuermann? It's hard to say. Obviously, we would just be speculating. We don't know if he's connected to her, and they're basically saying that he's not. But I think that there's still room for, because they'd made mistakes before in this case. So why is it we have to assume that this is a right decision that they're making? You know what I mean? I'm just saying it's still possible, in my opinion, until someone is tied to her murder, that maybe there was something taking place. Now, Rex's Google searches, some of that involved stuff that specifically said torture and begging. So I don't know what was taking place, but maybe sometimes, like for BTK, it's all about the torture process that excites them and gets them off, when I don't know if that was happening to Shannon and then she realized she needed help. I still think that there's room that something like that could have been taking place. Again, we don't have an official connection to Rex, but there are other murders that have taken place in Atlantic City that people are wondering are connected to Rex. So, Melissa Jade said, BTK said Rex is a copy of him. Was that in that Law and Crime segment? I haven't watched it yet, but I'm meaning to watch that. And the other thing too is they're saying that there's no connection to the other victims because Shannon called 911. I just don't see how that makes it any different, because if you're in a position where you're alone with somebody, especially how sex workers are, you're not really near your phone. So just because the other people didn't call 911, they're connected to Rex. But, I don't know. I just still think that not every crime is perfect, and maybe something went wrong, or maybe this was just about torturing her. And then they realized they went too far and they had to get rid of a witness. I don't know. Just some of the material that was explicit that was on his searches regarding type stuff. Who knows? I don't know. But what's this? Perry said Shannon Gilbert lawyer reported receiving taunting calls about her on his home phone, suggesting the caller was watching the home. Oh, I didn't hear about that. That's the thing, is this is a deep rabbit hole. And this was just a segment about Long Island serial killer that they went over a year ago. So now things are kind of coming to a head a year later, and we're all in different places. And this case has been for a long time rumored to be connected to Long Island serial killer. But they're saying, no, it's not. So I don't know. I just think when there's a lot to listen to still. So let's keep going. And again, thank you all for being here.
Certainly. So she has to make what you might say is a Sophie's choice. She has to decide whether to stay in the house where she's pretty certain to be hurt because she said so, or she has to go out into the darkness on the deck and then down into the on the driveway and out into the street in the total darkness. At that time, it's 4:53 when the phone call is first made, and she has to face who's ever out there. Which do you choose to do if you were her? And so you choose 911, makes perfect sense. We don't even know if she's using a throwaway phone, and she doesn't mention her telephone number, but she asks the people there at 911 to identify her so that they could find her. All of that makes perfect sense when you are under the threat of your life. And so when she bolts finally out of the house, which you will hear on that tape, it makes perfect rational sense to have done that. And then you hear the blood-curdling screams. So That's so far, that takes you through it so far as I see it.
So give me a little more background. What is Brewer and Michael Pack? Michael Pack is the driver she had that brought her from her home out to Long Island?
Yes, Michael Pack is an escort driver. That's what he does. He takes the place of the old-fashioned pimp. And he drives her in her SUV from Manhattan after midnight out to Oak Beach. It is highly unlikely that he, who is very concerned with money, every penny of money, would have taken that trip using the gas all the way out to Suffolk County in the pitch of the night for a small amount of money.
So we have the lawyers speculating, which was kind of what we were saying earlier, that maybe for the right amount of money, again, this would be a different setup because none of the other crimes connected to Rex had a driver involved in all that. I don't know. Again, for the right amount of money, even the lawyer is saying, who knows? And again, this is before Rex was arrested. So they're under the impression that she very well could be connected to the Long Island serial killer. This is a year ago. Rena asked, did he have a soundproof room at his house? Apparently a neighbor had witnessed him carrying in a metal door, like a vault, and the media reported that they'd seen material like that being taken out of the house. Pointer lover, yeah, she had no way to get out of there. Just Tom said, so Rex was outside. That's what I'm speculating. That's what I'm speculating. And again, this is me just adding in Rex, listening to this segment that was from a year ago before Rex was even on our radar. But yeah.
And to have made that arrangement all by telephone and trusted that he would have been paid, that doesn't make any sense. What does make sense is that this was a prearranged meeting. And the more details than that, we do not know, and the police haven't discovered. So
wait. Let me follow up on that because I want to make sure I'm following you here. Are you saying a prearranged meeting, something beyond the time she spent with Brewer?
Something else was arranged. Certainly Brewer was involved in it, but for Shannon to travel all the way out with Pack in that SUV would not ordinarily have occurred unless there was a prearranged meeting and there was a fairly good sum of money involved. Remember that Shannon normally has 2-hour trysts, and this tryst lasted for 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So according to Brewer and/or Pack, they claim that she agreed to do extra time once she got out there.
It has been ruled a tragic accident. However, they do claim that it's an ongoing investigation also, and they've gotten a second opinion, the family at least, that is done independently, and an independent medical examiner who believed that it was homicide. So I do think that those are noteworthy when we're speaking on things being corrupt and connected to law enforcement. Maybe the medical examiner that determined it was an accident has means to say so. Again, it's unfortunate that it was uncovered that there was corruption in the county, because now we have to question, or at least I do. I can't just take everything at surface value anymore.
That's not likely either, especially because Brewer has claimed publicly a number of times that when Shannon arrived, he didn't want to have anything to do with her because she looked like a man and he wouldn't have any kind of relations with her. He claimed that. That's hogwash. And so there are lies being told about the whole thing by these people who were involved. And these lies have never been pursued by the police in any capacity. Nonetheless, Brewer is the guy and who allegedly hires her. And when she gets there at some point, she and you won't hear it on the tape, but before the tape, she and Brewer leave the home of Brewer and drive in Brewer's car.
So here, this is where he's saying that it has been proven through their investigation that she leaves the home and, goes somewhere. Something takes place possibly. And hello, Roxanne. It's good to see you. And thank you so much for the cash app from the last live stream. I really appreciate you and everyone's support. And yeah, there was the broken hyoid bone, pardon me, was broken in Shannon's neck, which, is consistent with strangulation. So that's the thing. There's conflicting opinions pretty much. So
we don't know exactly where, but the claim is that they went to go to a CVS to pick up certain items and then bring them back. That's not likely, but that's what is said. But both Pack and Brewer claim that they left with Shannon earlier, and the telephone records we have support that point.
So they're saying that they did leave, but that they just went to CVS. And again, it's just a matter of their word against Shannon's. And of course, she has no say in any of this, and only her and her killer know exactly what happened. And the other people could know some, or maybe they know more, and they're sticking to their stories themselves.
And then they came back, Brewer and Shannon, to Brewer's home. So Shannon shows no fear of Brewer. She goes in his car. She goes in his house. She stays with him for almost 4 hours. He can't be the person who she says she's afraid that somebody is after me.
And that's the thing. And it can't be the people who she's around right there being so scared. So it kind of narrows things down. Well, it checks a few people off the list because she wouldn't be so calm. And the other thing, too, is if she was in some need of help, as far as she was in a psychosis, or she was, people were worried about her bipolar disorder, or she was irrational, they didn't seem to be too concerned when she was on 911. And again, obviously they think probably low of her or whatever. On the Daily News, they said that the case could have been solved a long time ago. There was a detective over the case and he was having sex with prostitutes. Also, he has a baby with a prostitute. And that pretty much lays out the foundation, unfortunately, before things got handed over to the task force, which obviously escalated things in the direction that it should have been going for a long time. It's sad to see. It's sad to see and accept, but it seems to be that these things do happen. So now I can't help but wonder if maybe there is something else that was covered up regarding Shannon. Yeah, well, yeah, Daniel, Shannon's death was no accident. She was buried with the other victims, and I think that the other ones were wrapped in burlap. Some of them out there were not, so they're kind of saying, well, maybe they're not connected. I don't know. I mean, maybe Shannon's wasn't supposed to end the way it did. Maybe it was just for torture, and then things took a turn and things happen. We just don't know 100% until they connect somebody else to Shannon. I still think that there's a possibility. And again, if it's not Shannon, I still think that there's possibility of Rex with other victims that we don't know about. Yeah, I just can't see how she wouldn't be connected to Rex. I know that's where the rabbit hole I'm stuck in. Just want to know exactly what happened.
Can't be. It has to be somebody else.
As we listen to that 911 call, I heard some laughter at one point in the background. She's saying these people are trying to kill me.
Right.
It's a gated community, right? So is there any record kept of who comes in and who comes out? Have all the people from that community behind the gate been interviewed? What are your thoughts there?
There were cameras, security cameras, at least 2 of them at the booth in the entranceway to the community. And those cameras were on, working that night. When she came and whoever left, they would have filmed. These cameras were in the charge of Dr. Peter Hackett who's one of the people who lived in Oak Beach at the time, and he was also an officer in the association board. He caused the tapes to be erased so that the police never got them. Police didn't even come for them until some 18 days after Shannon's disappearance. And in that time, they were all erased. There were several community members directly involved in this case and involved in seeing Shannon, and nonetheless, they were ignored by the police. The police did a very light touch investigation, and to this day, that's the way it's been.
Now, the other part of this story that grabbed even more headlines were the fact that once they started searching for Shannon, they discovered body after body after body. Hey, John, I'm interested in your thoughts on all the other bodies that were found as they were searching for Shannon and ones they found subsequent to that as well. Do you see a connection here?
Now, again, I just want to remind everyone, this is before Rex has been arrested. So they're asking the lawyer for Shannon's family, does he believe that all the bodies that were found out there are connected?
There's indubitably a connection amongst all of them. It's almost impossible to imagine rationally that they're not connected. Several of the bodies, the body parts or their trunks, as depending on the person, are found in Manorville, which is a wooded area further out in Long Island.
And that's the thing too, is like, there are differences, obviously, because there's an Asian male, but they said that he was dressed in women's clothing. The toddler, we've maybe accounted to being collateral damage because she was just there with the mother. They're all around the same age, including Shannon. So Rex has only been charged with 4, but Shannon actually falls in the same age group as them as well.
And, there other parts were found along Oak Beach, along Ocean Parkway from Oak Beach to Gilgo Beach and all the way down to Nassau County, the next county over. And
yes, the wife has filed for divorce. They have said that also the bodies are spread out. So that's another reason why they didn't think some of them were connected, but it's still a matter of who knows what he was thinking maybe that night, dumping them. Again, this is just speculation. And hello, Melissa. It's good to see you.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I really appreciate your boots on the ground reporting that you did. You did really good job for his, you kind of just went off the whim and said, I'm going to go. So I really appreciate that. And I found it really interesting that you went there. Anything you have to say, like in regards to his neighborhood or down near the Parkway?
Well, as far as his neighborhood, again, it's just peculiar to see his home. Given that he was an architect, it's a really, really nice area. And the homes are all gorgeous, and his sticks out like a sore thumb. So that's just strange. But as far as like the Gilgo Beach area and taking the trip down there, it really shows that it was really lucky of them to even find any of these girls. And it's just such a spread out area. There is no place you could pull off at. There is no light. So the likelihood that they would have ever even found them was really slim. So it's amazing, in the search for Shannon, that they were able to stumble upon all of their bodies, because if it wasn't for her, who knows if they'd ever be found.
I just don't understand why the documents said that it was out for a cadaver training exercise.
Mm-hmm.
And it just directly conflicts all the media reports, including stuff I believe the law enforcement have said themselves, or through the media, they've like confirmed, like, yes, we were looking for Shannon and we found these other victims. So it's just very bizarre.
It is. And I don't know if they're like intentionally separating her, like you said earlier. But yeah, it said that on December 11th, that he was conducting a training exercise with his canine partner, Blue, along Ocean Parkway. And then during the course of the training exercise, Blue located a set of human remains. And then just, one body continued after the other. But why they chose not to include her name, I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason behind it. But they were out there looking for her.
I know. And it's one thing to say there's no connection between Rex and her, and this is why we don't think so. It's another thing to see Rex's court stuff, like regarding the bail and all that, and then they just don't even mention her. I don't know. It was just kind of strange. And it could be something, it could be nothing. And just the history in the I don't know. I guess they've changed things up with the police, and obviously adding the task force changed the investigation too. But it's just crazy to see what was going on there.
Well, and the MO is identical, right? So if you want us to believe Shannon had no association with Rex, like what is the likelihood that everything would fit perfectly and she was found right where they were found within that time frame? You know, like it's too many coincidences, too similar to overlook.
I agree. Let me play some more of this. So just sit back and relax. And thanks for hopping up. And if you ever need to just hop off, just feel free.
Sounds good.
There was a baby found who was matched up with a mother who was found miles away along the same strip. And there was also an Asian male, cross-dressing allegedly, Asian male found as well along that strip. They all have similar patterns. The throat seems to have been the focus of whoever did the killing. In Shannon's case, she too was like the others that they could identify. She was a sex worker, and her throat appears to have been damaged as well. She had a bone that's known as the hyoid bone in her throat. Everybody has one of those. It's the only bone that's not connected to any other bone in the body. It's very difficult to reach. Shannon's hyoid bone was snapped at both ends. It's a U-shaped bone, small, and it had a hole virtually drilled right through the middle of the bone.
And I just want to pause here real quick for EE Caroline's comment. Cops may be anticipating defense tactics, so they want ironclad Long Island serial killer victims in the charges. And I think that there is an aspect of there's only 4 right now because those obviously they want a conviction. So they feel 100% solid with those ones. What do you think?
I've heard that before, and I think that that's a good possibility. Like, God forbid something falls through with one case that they have a backup in some sense. I'd like to think that's what it is, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That the snapping of the bone is indicative of a homicide. Some of the other women who were found were also found having been either strangulated or suffocated. One of them we know was suffocated with her underwear having been stuffed down her throat. So there are commonalities in all of these things, and the dismemberment of some of them is common from one to the other. They stretch out in terms of their disappearance over years. But they're all in fact 4 of them are found in tandem with burlap either taught, it looks like burlap was placed over them in the spots where they were found along.
And that's the other thing too, like things might be different between the victims because he might have been perfecting a manner of doing things or just decides to change it for various reasons, like maybe like when they're discussing like the panties shoved down the throat, like we don't know if that was every single one. Maybe it was something where he was like, let me just mark that off my list, like a fantasy or something that he wanted to try. Maybe even that ties in the Asian male too.
And like there's only so much practicing you could do, right? Like you could sit there in your mind and you could envision what would be your perfect kill, and it might have been something that he thought about the last time, and so with his next victim he wanted to try something different and to explore that.
Yeah, and just like thinking about the items that they took out of his house, and everyone's been speculating on, did the crimes occur at his house and then he like moved them?
I believe
the dismembered stuff, does that tie in his storage unit? And hello, CDT, and feel free, CDT, if you want to join the discussion up on panel 2.
Hi, CDT. I think that because conveniently, going through that bail application, every single victim listed in this bail application that he's been charged with, his wife was out of state every single time. And so that really implies that there was something going on at the home, because then, I don't know, I'd at least to see another victim when his wife wasn't around if it was not at home that things were being done. But being at home, that's his comfort zone, that's his space, that's where his supplies would be, and it's much more inconspicuous versus if it was like a hotel or somewhere in public.
Right. And just him knowing that he grew up in that house and obviously that neighborhood, just think about the upper hand that he had in that aspect of like, you just know like what traffic is like in the middle of the night, or you just know that area of the beach, like there's no patrols. Maybe he had gone there as an adolescent to smoke weed or do other things that teens do or whatever. And he just knew that it was his safe area if he ever needed to do something that he didn't want anyone to see. It's just so convenient being so close to his house.
It was really, really close. And, you know, when I went, it was around traffic. There's always traffic in New York, no matter what time. But if you were to go in the middle of the night, around the times that his phone was active, and, you know, it looks like, you know, it'd be around like 2, 3 a.m. It's a straight shot. It's a straight shot, and he would make it there within 15 minutes.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Ocean Parkway. So they're related for sure. They're all related. And there's very likely more than one person involved in these killings.
It's unbelievable to hear the investigators saying there's no connection here. There's no commonality between this sex worker's death and the death of the other ones who are all lined up along the strip there in Gilgo. I mean, it's mind-boggling to even say that.
Well, you say so because you're an objective observer, but if you...
And again, this is before Rex has been arrested. So this is a year ago, and Vinny is under a high impression that, like, how can you not think that they're all connected? So I just find that interesting in retrospect.
To listen to the police department from the get-go on this case, a police department that was thoroughly sexually and otherwise corrupted from the top down, from their police chief down, he having spent time in jail and having solicited prostitutes on his journey through the police. You take their word. They want you to believe the absurd. They want you to believe that of 11 people, of whom most of them were identifiable as sex workers, and the others weren't identifiable one way or the other. You're supposed to believe that they're all lined up on the same narrow strip of Parkway along a waterfront, and all of them in the same work, all of them with very similar patterns of dismemberment and throat injuries, all of them, including Shannon Gilbert, in the marsh on one side or the other of the Parkway. And you're supposed to believe, according to the police, that with all of what you heard on that tape so far, and with
And normally I would say, you know, let's trust what law enforcement is saying. But unfortunately, just to reiterate, this agency has been proven to be corrupt and involved in the sex work ring.
Right. Well, and let me ask you, do you think it's possible that, because from the beginning we've heard that possibility of he's worked with others, do you think it's possible that maybe with one or two of the victims there were multiple involved, and with others he decided to work solo?
That's the thing too, is I hate to even throw the theory out there, but regarding, I kind of feel comfortable speculating on it just because we have some of his Google searches and the explicit material that he was researching. I mean, it wasn't just your regular stuff, you know,
No,
it was
it
very
was
much,
horrifying.
yeah, like very violent against children and women. And words like torture was used over and over. So I hate to bring in dark web theories, but is there some people who maybe thought that it was enough money for them to be help them film something or distribute something, or I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just, I think, questionable. That's all.
Do you know the date of Shannon's disappearance off the top of your head?
Well, she was found in 2011, and I believe it took 18 months to find her, I think, hold on. I
Because
had
I'd
it,
be
I wrote it.
curious if she went missing first. Because if she went missing first,
Right, that helps.
it would be like maybe he didn't do the first one alone because you're scared and you're, like this is all new. I don't know, but then he got comfortable and the rest he did solo.
I know, it's hard to, like, include people in such, like, heinous stuff, like, to
Right.
think that it's, like, a conspiracy, but
Well,
who knows?
I'm trying to incorporate what he's saying in this interview and the likelihood that someone else seems to be involved, so maybe, I don't know, it's hard to say.
No, let me look up Shannon's stuff while I play this because
Yeah,
I
go
wanna
for
get
it.
the exact date.
Some of the other facts that we have that certainly implicate murder, that somehow Shannon Gilbert just happens to be a coincidence and has nothing to do with the others, and wandered into the marsh and killed herself there by some accidental means and laid face up on top of a bush where they found her remains later on, and she died of a tragic accident. If you listen to the police department as we speak, that is their story. That is a lie. That is a corrupted story. They are covering up for something very deep and serious. And there's no doubt about that anymore. There was always a doubt about it for years when they wouldn't release the tapes. But when I went to court and finally forced them to release the tapes, now they spun their story out, and this is their latest story. This is a police department of homicide investigators, some of the supposed to be the best professionals in this country, but certainly the highest paid. And these homicide people are supposed to rely upon evidence. They themselves admit they have no evidence whatsoever that Shannon Gilbert died by accident, yet that is the spin they want you to believe. They massage the evidence into basically a false stance, and thereby try to convince the public of the utterly absurd that this girl died by accident instead of by homicide.
Yeah.
And remember, they got their own second opinion from a medical examiner who is saying, no, I don't agree with what law enforcement is saying. This was homicide. So Shannon Gilbert was 23, which is right in the age range that Rex preferred and that his victims were as well. Well, the ones that he's charged for, at least, allegedly. But it says Gilbert was a Craigslist escort who lived in New Jersey. She traveled with her driver, Michael Peck, from Manhattan to meet a client, Joseph Brewer, at his home in Oak Beach Association on the morning of May 1st, 2010. So, and then it goes on to say that her body was discovered in December 2011. So she was missing, it was still skeletal remains, though.
Okay, May 1st, 2010. Because with Melissa, July 10th. So that would be right before Melissa. Too much. See, it's way too close. It's way too close.
And the problem is, too, because I'm looking at the dates from the other ones, and some of them it's spread out. I mean, there's one called Peaches, the one found with the baby. That was, she went missing. Oh, wait, no. Yeah, she went missing in 97. So it's kind of very spread out, but at the same time, who knows? Experts have also said they don't think Rex started these murders in his 40s and that it was happening long prior. So who knows? You know
And
what I
I
mean?
don't think they stopped in 2011 either,
Yeah.
Not with those recent Google searches. Up until a week before he was arrested, there was a lot of pressure to make this arrest because of his current Google searches, burner phones, and the things that he was looking up. I highly doubt that these were the only victims, and I know that they're looking into it, right? Even with Atlantic City, the 4 girls that they found, they fit exactly what these 4 Gilgo Beach victims, as far as the age, the sex work, how, the manner of death. And it's like, I don't think he stopped. I think he just switched it up.
Yeah, and the sad part is as I'm looking through, like, the information on all the victims out there, not just the 4 that he's being charged with. It's some of them state when they were last seen and the date, and others don't, because unfortunately with sex workers, that's the thing, is like they don't have, some of them, the family that are checking in with them, and they are kind of out on their own probably for years, you know what I mean? So it's not like they're surrounded by family and friends who care if they go missing. So some of these, by the time they were found after Shannon, they're already past the point of like they don't have even anyone who called them missing.
Right. They live a lifestyle to where if they don't call one day or show up, that's not unusual for them given the lifestyle.
Right.
Because that would disconnect her from all the other bodies that are there, and all of a sudden make it completely different. John Ray, what we just heard, that screaming, the running, she's outside. It seems like she is accusing Pac, her driver, of being part of whatever happened that night.
Yes, she is. She tells him, or she says to him sarcastically, "Are you part of this?" or words to that effect. And he leaves, or apparently goes outside. And then when she bolts and runs outside, you hear those blood-curdling screams, but you don't know who caused it. And then she continues to run. The police spin that story incorrectly on purpose. They put on a false light on that whole story, because what she does is she runs until she knocks on the door of a fellow named Gus Coletti, an older man, and he does not let her in. He does not say anything to her except a few sarcastic comments, and she says nothing to him whatsoever, and then bolts and disappears again until she knocks on another woman's door, Mrs. Brennan. But during that time, the police have now spun that story to say that Coletti invited her in to his house, that she went into his house and bolted irrationally, when none of that happened and none of that's on the tape. They're lying about what happened. But what you do know happened is what you heard, is that somebody assaulted her and she escaped. And she did exactly what would be rational. She bolted for her life. So there's so much more to this case, and there's so many more pieces of evidence that the police refuse to investigate, and it's a willful refusal.
I wanted to put up on the screen for you part of the report from Dr. Michael Bodden, who did an independent evaluation of what happened to Shannon Gilbert. And this is what he found. Almost all of the skeletal bones were recovered and appeared normal. There was not evidence of trauma. However, the larynx was missing, and only the body of the hyoid bone was found. The 2 greater horns of that neck bone were missing. These structures, the larynx and the hyoid bone, are often fractured during homicidal manual strangulation. My examination of the recovered body of the hyoid bone after it had been anthropologically defleshed showed a roughness at the margins where the separated horns had been attached. It is my opinion, based on the circumstances of Shannon's death and the materials I've reviewed, that there's no evidence that she died of a natural disease, of a drug overdose, or of a drowning. There's insufficient information to determine a definite cause of death, but the autopsy findings are consistent with homicidal strangulation. What are your thoughts tonight?
Yeah, isn't this fascinating? You know, you've got Suffolk that's saying that, they've apparently opined that this was a drug overdose, and, oh, by the way, she drowned as well. Well, what are you basing that upon? We're talking about skeletal remains. How'd you draw toxicology to make that conclusion? Maybe she had some kind of history of drug usage in the past. And while we're talking about it, how'd you come to the conclusion that she drowned? Did you examine her lungs? No, I forgot. There are no lungs. She was skeletonized. Did you examine her inner ear? No, because there's not going to be anything there. That's one of the things we look for in drowning. But what Dr. Bodden did conclude is that after he finally got his hands on the hyoid, remember, they've already examined this. They talked about the defleshing. That's one of the things that the anthropologist does. He finally got his hands on the hyoid and was able to examine it. And interestingly enough, the horns were missing. And as counsel had mentioned earlier, this bone, the hyoid bone, is the only non-articulated bone in the body. It simply is there to anchor the tongue then. And this sits way, way high up in the neck. That's why you always talk about, with manual strangulations, one of the things that people look for in my field in medical legal death investigation Has someone C-clamped this person? Have they throttled them so high up in their neck that they're going to pop this bone? They're going to crack it. And apparently Dr. Biden is opining that after he's seen this defleshed highway bone.
Manuel Gomez, private investigator. Your thoughts about the police department out there? There's been a lot of skepticism about them. Some of the folks have gotten into a lot of trouble out there. What happened here? What happened? Why can't this thing be solved? Why is the investigation gone the way it's gone?
Well, it could have been solved if they wouldn't have dropped one major ball in this case. And one of that was all 5 of these women had online aliases, and they were being sex trafficked online. Like, for example, Babylon Escorts, where they sell women and they advertise the prices. All of them were doing this. All of them had the same John Doe initiating contact with them, trying to hook up with them. The police department failed to subpoena these internet services, these escort sex trafficking services that would have showed the connection that all these women had the same guy reaching out to them, or the same men. Unfortunately, they dropped the ball on this. And I know this personally because, like I said, I have done numerous cases in Long Island for sex trafficking, and these sites are still up. And one of them, you can go on now, it's Babylon Escorts. They not only sell the women, but they star rate them. It's insanity. And this is, it's a shame because, you know, this girl was on the call for 22 minutes with 911. She was asking for help. Now listen, anybody knows Gilgo Beach and Long Island, that area, a cop call could have responded within that time frame. The fact that the ball was dropped on so many levels, and the fact that they did not subpoena, and to this day still haven't subpoenaed the internet sites that all 5 of these women were on. And the sad thing is that the records stay on these sites between 6 and 8 years. The ghost image stays on their hard drive up to 10 years. That evidence is still there and it has not been researched.
Okay, so I just want to bring it back around to, you know, Shannon calls 911, says, you know, these people are plotting to kill me. They want to kill me. You were part of this all along. And then she ends up, according to the cops, having an accident. I just don't see the likelihood of that. I don't know. Maybe I'm not seeing it.
I don't see it whatsoever. And it's just terrifying because she was being hunted, you know, like she did everything she should have done. She called 911. She tried to get help. And the fear she must have been experiencing, I don't even see that really as a psychotic break because I don't see anything that, like, she ended up dead, right? And the condition that her body was found in, I just can't find a plausible explanation that she was not murdered.
Right. Especially with there being conflicting opinions with medical examiners. And then this is, I don't know the date on this because it says it was updated July 14th, 2023. But this press conference, I believe, is old.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want to play this. I am skipping through it because they do play the 911 call, but they don't play the whole thing. And I do want to just point that out too, because I think that's important. Like, why wouldn't they cut off the part where she screams at the end?
Right.
And for providing the needed resources to help us with this case. Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, Suffolk County Sheriff Errol
Does this
Tuan,
sound okay for everyone?
State Police Major George
It is
Moe,
for me.
Nassau County Police Commissioner Pat Ryder, and the Long Island FBI team. Since this case started, members of the Suffolk County Police Department have worked tirelessly on this case. And since I became police commissioner, they continue their efforts to allow me to produce information out to the public that they believe will not impede this investigation. I want to commend the efforts from the investigators in the homicide squad, Suffolk County Police Department K-9, and especially our crime lab members for their efforts in this case going back to 2010. After much deliberation with our homicide detectives and the members of the Gilgo Beach Homicide Task Force, we have made the determination that releasing the Shannon Gilbert 911 call will not hinder this investigation or any other cases that may be connected to the Gilgo Beach homicide. And today, I'm announcing that we're going to release it to the public. In addition to Shannon's 911 call, you will also hear audio from 2 additional 911 calls that were made by other homeowners within the Oak Beach Association after they had interacted with Shannon that morning. In just a few minutes, we will play for you a video created by our audio-visual resource team who worked every step of the way with our Gilgo Beach task force, which helped the public understand the circumstances surrounding the 3 911 calls on the morning that Shannon Gilbert went missing. While Shannon's calls last more than 21 minutes, there are lengthy portions that include dead and inaudible conversation. The purpose of this video is to help the public understand the circumstances surrounding the call and where Shannon was within the community at each significant moment. Importantly, I want the public to know that in addition to what you will see today, Shannon's full unedited 911 call is being released, and I encourage the public to listen to the entire call. In the video you are about to watch, which will be uploaded in the gilgonews.com website, as well as the Suffolk County Police Department's YouTube page, you will hear portions of Shannon's 911 call, view transcripts with names of individuals that can be heard in the background during the call, and view mapping of the path we believe Shannon traveled, as well as visuals of her surroundings captured on a similar date and time from when she went missing. I understand that many of you will be wondering, why are we releasing the audio of the 911 call today? Like I stated earlier, we have determined that at this time, the release of the audio will not impede the investigation in this case anyway.
When really we heard from Vinny that the lawyer had to push for a court order. Like for a while they had tried to get the 911 call and they wouldn't release it. And then they got a court order after it took like years to do this whole court process. And then they released it. But here they spin the narrative, in my opinion, that, you know, they felt that it wasn't harmful to the investigation. But if it was just an accident, then what investigation exactly is going on? I'm going to try to just fast forward to see, but the page takes like a minute to load sometimes. So I just want to see if I can get through the 911 stuff. Hold on.
May 1st, 2010.
So this is
A Craigslist sex worker.
This is them showing through their press conference a screen. So that's why it's like all crooked and not as high quality, because it's a screen. So let me just, and they're going to play the 911 call that way. So hold on.
Resident of Jersey City, located 17 Fairway.
I'm sorry?
Shannon. Yes, this, very small. The board I can't.
Made it 5.
All right. So I'm just going to point out how they play this 911 call and then they claim that it ends in a part that cuts off the part where she screams, pretty much like we played earlier with the court TV segment.
Hello? Hello? What are you doing?
She then runs from Coletti's home, prompting Coletti to call 911. After Coletti's call, Shannon then runs another 0.2 of a mile to another home at 43 Bayou, prompting a third 911 call made at 5:30 a.m. by Barbara Brennan.
Then they just get into the 911 calls from the neighbors. Totally like skipping, like we didn't even hear her screaming. I'm just confused by that.
Yeah, it's weird.
And then like they like pretty much that's the narrative that they pushed for that press conference. So I just wanted to point that out just to say, you know, because again, who knows if Rex is involved in Shannon's death. But at the same time, what is going on as far as this narrative and, you know, things behind the scenes, perhaps, again, in addition to them reporting over and over that she was tied to the Long Island serial killer, possibly, and then switching it up to no, she's not. And then also saying that just, I don't know, just her case is just weird. The fact that they didn't state that they found the other bodies in Rex's bail information, and they said that they found them because of a training exercise with cadaver dogs, when for so long, for like years, that it's been reported that they stumbled on all those other bodies out there because of looking for Shannon.
Yep.
So it's just some weird stuff going on, but I just wanted to play two things and then close out our deep dive into this case. Again, who knows what other crimes Rex is tied to, but
I
do
think more is going to
that,
come out. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the thing is like he could be tied to other things, but they just can't get a conviction. So we have to keep that in mind. Like maybe the DNA wasn't there. You know, they found Rex's wife's hair. You know, they found one of his. So that just goes to show like how meticulous he is as a person and particular about the way that he disposed of some of them. You know, it's some of them were out there for a long time. So
I have to believe though that he didn't stop killing. I really don't. Maybe he took breaks, but the more time that went on, he must have got more and more comfortable because in that bail application, he started to reuse names like with the burner accounts and the burner phones. He started to reuse Gmails and because when you go so long without getting caught, right, you start to become comfortable to the point where he was taking selfies of himself with these burner phones. And so I think that there are absolutely other victims out there. And if he was getting sloppy to that point, it's just a matter of time before they piece it all together.
Yeah, I agree. And the him having the Tinder picture that was like taken from the burner phone too, it's like, are you serious?
Yep.
But yeah, there's so many out there too. Like I'm sure there's a level of them being overwhelmed with all those bodies that were found when they were looking for Shannon.
Yeah.
So this is from Inside Edition. I think that it's interesting because not only I don't know if you guys saw, she's been on Hidden True Crime, her interview, the sex worker who had a date with Rex. I don't know if you saw it, but pretty much she says something similar to what this other woman says, who worked with him like through a professional setting, like not sex work. But it was he says to them, like, you know, there was 10 victims. Now, again, he's only been he's only been charged with 4, allegedly. He's only tied to those 4 right now. So the fact that we have multiple sources, and she stated it with Hidden True Crime, and then she was on News Nation with Cuomo, and she said the same thing, like along the lines of when they were talking about the crime that he brought up, he stated that there was 10 of them. So that also leads me to think, you know, if we're to believe that, you know, maybe Shannon is one of those 10.
And well, he was charged with 3, and he's the prime suspect as far as Miss Barnes.
Yes.
So he hasn't been charged with the F.
Yes, thank you.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate your attention to detail too. It's just like CDT, and I just love the way you research. So if anyone hasn't checked out Melissa, you should definitely check her out. She deep dives, probably as thorough, if not more than myself. That's why it takes me like all week. I really wanted to get the case, and I do appreciate your in-person. I thought that what you did was really like awesome, honestly.
Thank you. That's really sweet of you. Thank you.
It takes a lot. Like I seen Duty Ron do the drive-through too, and it takes a lot to not only stream but to be driving and you want to narrate. Like
it was definitely a learning experience. Like my phone flipped out of the like dashboard holder at one point, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna learn though. But it was definitely nice to be able to get boots on the ground, and it was eerie, like I said, just because how close. And when I went through his bail application and to read his searches, it was extremely uncomfortable because, as a mom, you have a kid in the area, and just to know how close monster, and that's all around, like they're so close and they look like you or me, they're doctors, lawyers, teachers, you never know. And it's just a very uncomfortable feeling.
It is.
He was a weirdo, and I didn't want to be around that.
Interior designer Dominique Vidal was in a networking group with Heurmann. She says he actually discussed the murders with her.
Pay close attention.
Do I know about the Gilgo beach murders? And of course I do. And he goes on to tell me, yeah, that's a serial killer that was never caught in my hometown.
She says Heurmann left her this bizarre voicemail after she quit the group because she didn't want to be around him.
Hey, this is Rex. I heard you are no longer part of the group. I still wanted to talk to you. I had a question for you and also wanted to touch base.
And not only another reason why I wanted to play this, in addition to just connecting, like her saying that he brought up 10 victims. I don't know if she says it in this one, but she does say it on her TikTok that, he mentioned 10, but also this fact that she like quit like this or left this group, and he leaves this voicemail after discussing the murders with her pretty much, so it makes me wonder if there was like a part of him that was like panicky or like paranoid, like
overcompensating. Like, crap, let me call.
Yeah.
So if you get an opportunity, you can always try me at the office. Hope you're doing good. Hope to talk to you soon.
Also disturbing, internet sleuths discovered this image on Google Street View. It shows Heurmann speaking to a woman on 36th Street, close to his Manhattan office last summer. And we're learning that a criminologist gave cops a detailed profile of the Gilgo Beach serial killer 13 years ago. It turns out to be an eerily accurate description of Heurmann. Profiler Scott Bond told the New York Times in 2011 the killer would be a white male in his mid-40s. He is married or has a girlfriend, well-educated and well-spoken, financially secure, has a job, and owns an expensive car or truck. That's Rex Heuermann to a T. Dr. Bond spoke with Anne Mercogliano.
What was it about the murders that made you come up with this?
So if that profile came out in 2011, it makes me wonder if that has anything to do with letting his house go to shambles, because if it was put out there in the media, like, yes, this is what it'll be, and he's going to look wealthy and successful, and then his house looked the way it was, it's just kind of stunning.
Right. But that was creepy. Just to even hear his voice and stuff, whether you believe the TikToker or not, but like his voice, it's like, oh, because you just know the evil behind it, the evil, what his intentions were, what he was doing. I still can't believe he got over and taunted the family the way he did. I cannot imagine what they went through.
And how did he not think that that would be detrimental to like him staying below the radar? Because they connect that burner phone to his office area.
Like, that's what I mean by, as far as like when you look at that bail application and you realize just how sloppy he was, and he would have only gotten more sloppy. But technology has advanced even in that short period of time, but it's just, I don't know how he managed to do that, because especially if he did it more than once, you know, he knows that they could have tapped in, you know, like been recording anything, and he didn't care. He didn't care.
And that's the thing too, is like when we analyze even other cases, it's like, how could Brian Koberger have left the sheet allegedly? And it's kind of like the same here. Like, how could he have used the burner phones and then called the victim's family? It's like
From
we
their
don't
phone.
know.
One of them, he used her phone. He used Melissa's phone and called. So these families, their child is missing. They don't know where she is. And then her number starts calling them. And it's this evil monster on the other line depicting horrific things and details of what he did to their daughter. I could not imagine.
Right. And there's no rhyme or reason to it's so hard to understand, you know, why these things take place. That's the other thing too, is like, if these were all sex workers, I can't help but wonder, like, okay, so did they follow through with the transaction, or was this all about torturing? And you know what I mean? Like, I can't help but wonder, like, where exactly it like lied, like where
Right.
BTK, it wasn't so much the sexual act after, it was the torturing. And
That's
but
a good
for
question.
Bundy, it seemed like it was the whole thing. And
Yeah.
then sometimes after, it's just kind of like, I don't
No,
know.
that's a great point. I didn't really think of it like that. Like, how far did it get? Right.
And that you don't, all these details will help to for, you know, FBI profilers to understand like where exactly he falls, like in regards to what kind of predators are out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Profile.
He meticulously dismembered these women, bound them up carefully in burlap bags with various ties, and then carefully deposited them in a very secluded area. It takes a very organized type of killer to engage in this type of activity.
Meanwhile, cops have raided a storage facility on Long Island rented by Heurmann. These storage units in Amityville, New York are just 3 miles from Heurmann's house. They rent for up to $600 a month, and police say he rented 2 of them. They are now collecting the contents, looking for any so-called trophies he may have collected from his alleged victims.
We've just started. We're going to continue. We're going to follow through, and we're going to follow that evidence wherever it leads us.
This just released video.
Okay, so we already seen that other stuff anyways, but pretty much just to get a perspective too, if anyone watches Police Off the Cuff, he's retired NYPD, his opinion was, you know, he's seen crime scene units and police at a crime scene like this before for a long time, but he said this is sort of a little bit longer than he's used to seeing. Like, they're still, as far as we all knew, I think yesterday or whatever, they're still there, like
Yes.
in the house and all that. So I thought that was a significant input that he had given recently in one of his live streams. So the escort interview, I just want to play it a little bit, but he or she was on Hidden True Crime, and I found her credible. Otherwise, I wouldn't really linger on every word, but to me, I found her to be really truthful when she spoke in their interview over there. So, and again, she does mention that he describes there being 10 victims. So who is going to be linked to him, or maybe some never will be because of, you know, the way that the crime proceeded.
Mm-hmm.
And that he seemed normal at first when he said all of that, but like, you know, when someone's real big and they kind of like use their weight to seem somewhat intimidating.
Yeah.
That's like kind of the vibe.
During menopause, estrogen is going to drop and cortisol is.
So you met him at a restaurant, right?
Yeah, to see him.
All right, so now tell me, because now start telling me what the clues were for you, that like when you sat down, because you said he was talking about true crime and specifically the Gilgo Beach stuff.
Yeah, so when we sat down, like it was basic talk, all normal stuff, seemed normal. And then he was like, oh, are you a true crime buff? And I am, I'm not gonna lie. So we got on that subject and we talked about like certain serial killers and little things. And I said, well, have you heard of the Gilgo Beach murders? And I said, yeah, everybody from Long Island has, we're all following that case. And then he started like talking about it and he tried to say like, you know, he and hypotheticals and like what he thought. But it was the way that he was saying it didn't seem like a true crime fan who just wanted to talk about it.
Help me understand. Like, what were you picking up?
Like his body language kind of changed and like his eyes were like as if he was in a different place. Like he was picturing it all over again. Like he wasn't like quite, it was weird. He almost kind of made the victims like seem like people who didn't matter.
How so?
I don't know. I feel like he was just like, well, they were all escorts anyway, kind of thing, or like just little things like that.
He was saying that to you?
Yes.
So, all right. So he's saying that. What else were you picking up on him that you were like, this guy, I got to get out of here?
The way he talked about it, that was like 100%.
So it was like he was into it. Did he suggested all that it was him or no?
No, but the way he talked about it seemed like somebody who like really wanted to be able to brag about what they did, but can't. And I feel like he told girls that were in the situation or in or vulnerable or wouldn't go to police because that gave him the opportunity to be able to kind of brag about it and in a not obvious hypothetical way. He was almost like agitated that I didn't want to go home with him.
So he wanted to go home again after the date.
Afterward, yeah, towards the end, he asked if I was going to go back with him. And I didn't want to be like impolite. So I tried to be nice. And I was like, you know, it's really late. I'd have to follow you all the way out to Nassau. I don't know the area. And I have to drive back at night. And he was like, oh, no, you should leave your car here. Why would you take your car? You could just come in mine. And that like really like weirded me out. And I was like, I wouldn't get in the car with somebody. I don't know you. I'm not going to get in your car. And
how do you take it?
He seemed just agitated, like, oh, I paid for a date. I came all the way to Suffolk. Like, I'm here and doing all this work, and now she's not going to come back with me.
And how does it end?
Well, like I said, I called a friend. And
right, but like body language wise, how he was when he left, like, what do you remember?
I was scared because he had this very like overpowering, like
standing over you kind of deal?
Yeah, kind of intimidating. He tried to give me a hug goodbye, but it was very like uncomfortable and weird, and just everything about it was very, very strange. He seemed like he enjoyed talking about it too much. Not like somebody who empathizes with the victims and is following the case.
Did he seem to be fascinated with like the how or where the bodies were or who he thought did it? Like, where did his curiosity take him?
Yeah, he would bring up like, so he brought up the bags they were in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And like how? Like, how did he talk about him? The camouflage burlap?
Yeah, the burlap sacks. He just talked about the burlap sacks and bodies going into burlap, and he said like
how so? What did that mean? Bodies going into burlap?
He tried to, I'm not gonna say who, he tried to kind of be like, I said, who do you think it is? Hypothetically. And he tried to put the blame on somebody and kind of relate it to the burlap sacks, just to, I guess, make me feel more comfortable. But I don't think at the time they had even talked about the burlap sacks yet.
Did he talk about his appetites? Like, because one of the things that
like what he liked to do.
Yeah, because one of the things that made the cops think it was time to move on him, because they have to do this balancing test. Like, we got to get as much good stuff to have a strong case versus the God forbid if he does it again on our watch.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really started to concern them was that he was searching more and more reportedly for like rapey porn, for lack of a more sensitive term. Did he come across that way to you?
Yeah, he seemed like somebody who was like very rough. He didn't seem like a soft, tender kind of person in any way.
Did he talk about it that way in terms of what's he into or no?
No, because like people are very discreet on when they talk about it beforehand. Usually it's in person, but I was so weirded out. I had no intention of that happening anyway. So like I didn't even breach the subject. I wanted out right after he talked about the Gilgo.
Do you remember anything that he said else about the murders or why he was interested in them or whether he thought there were more or anything like that?
I remember him mentioning the total 10. He said, like, isn't there 10 people? And I remember him mentioning a girl from Jersey. He said, oh, there's that girl from Jersey. They're wondering if it's connected. He's like, I think it is.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com. Newsnation Now.
Yes.
See, I'm inclined to believe a lot of what she's saying is true because if you remember the Google searches from Rex's phone, and this was between March 22 and June 2023. He was Googling things like Long Island serial killer update, FBI active serial killers, America's 5 most notorious old cases, 11 currently active serial killers, 8 terrifying active serial killers, like a lot of searches about himself. And I think it's because not only did he get the thrill of the kill, but similar to like when he would call the victims' families, I think it gave me Luca Magnotta vibes. Luca Magnotta was found and arrested Googling himself. I think he got a thrill out of even the one search that says terrifying serial killers. I think he liked that people were terrified and he wanted to see the impact and he wanted to see what did people think about him, because in that way he also got some type of gratification from it.
Yeah. And like Tom said, they can't not be braggy. Like they just can't help themselves.
Right. Especially after so much time passing too. Again, I imagine you getting too comfortable starting to make mistakes, you get, it's like going into a convenience store, and every time you walk in there, you steal something. The first time you're really, really nervous. Oh my God, am I going to get caught? The second time you do it, you get a little more relaxed. So he's been going into convenience stores stealing things for years, well over a decade. At that point, you get cocky, and so, I mean, it's not the best comparison, but I just imagine as time went on, he wouldn't have been as locked down as he would as far as the beginning.
Yeah. And even the fact, some of them might have been out there before the ones found in the camo burlap. So
Yes.
maybe the ones prior, he realized like, well, their clothing, you could kind of see them. I need to do something different. So then he changed up his method. And like, not only do they get slappier sometimes, like as far as like him posting the picture of him on Tinder that he took with the burner phone, but sometimes it can go in the direction of like they're perfecting certain things. So,
Right.
He decides to wrap them in burlap. And again, this is just speculating that he's tied to the other bodies that were out there. We don't know that for sure, but thank you, Pizza Chemist. It's good to see you. And thank you so much for your support. And thank you, Roxanne, for the Cash App that you sent. I really appreciate it. Well, the pretty much closing thought I wanted to bring up is kind of to relate it to Jeffrey Dahmer and how he had stated when he had gotten caught, he felt a sense of relief.
Yes.
And I feel like other ones have said the same, but I don't want to quote them because I know that Jeffrey for sure felt like he was like relieved.
There was another one who specifically, I don't remember who, but they're like, you need to catch me or I'm going to keep killing, like almost like I have no self-control and I want you to catch me because if you don't, I'm not going to stop.
Right. And it's like, I just wonder, where does Rex fall? Because they bombarded him in the middle of Midtown, which, imagine being there. What if people were on vacation and they were just happened to be like in the area or something,
Yeah.
And they're just like, what? And they surrounded him. Oh yeah. I was going to say, Johnny, thank you. He said like Zodiac. I thought it was Zodiac where it was sort of like crying out for like a red flag in a way, but who knows?
Right.
But it's crazy to see. Yeah, exactly. Mel Max said ego. I think that's going to be a lot of what Rex is about. I don't know. I've been watching a lot about him, and I think it's interesting that his father passed when he was 12. I don't know what significance that has on everything, but it's sort of like right before puberty starts, and all his crimes are obviously perverse. So something, I don't know. When did it start where he was getting thrills hurting things pretty much,
Right. Absolutely. I'd like to know. I want to know when was the first victim, and I don't think we're going to get those answers for a long time, if ever. But I'd be curious to know because I'd like to know how much his MO changed and how he committed the crimes changed over time.
Yeah. Hopefully we get some more information. Like you said, that bail's information had a lot of shocking, but also it was very informative as far as like laying out, the cast with FBI stuff and all that.
Right. Now there was a lot of information in that bail application. I wasn't anticipating that much to be in there. But yeah, they have a really strong case against him from what we could see so far.
Just Tom said there's likely something with the relation to his mother, and I can't disagree there,
There usually is.
There is, yeah. Whatever that means, it's something that we see frequently, but I appreciate you hopping up here.
Amber, thank you so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure, and I love hearing your thoughts and opinions regarding these cases, and you always do such an amazing job with presentation.
Thank you. Likewise. So if anyone hasn't check her out over on Melissa Jade. And yeah, we'll have to do this again soon.
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to hop off. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, everyone. I appreciate you all being here. We'll be keeping up with this case as well as other cases. So we'll talk very soon. And again, we're on a Sunday night live stream schedule. Usually it's been Monday morning, but we're doing a different schedule in the summertime. And then as I get ready to move in August, I'll have to touch base with you guys as often as I can, covering numerous cases. So we will talk soon. And thanks everyone for being here. Appreciate you all.